Welcome to the True Rotarian Podcast. This podcast is specially designed for all the true Rotarians by a true Rotarian. Buddy, why have you joined Rotary?
Go back 88 years before 93 to a cold Chicago evening in 1905.
Eradicating some of the most deadliest diseases from the earth.
Some of what Hemant said was also true. Not all of it, of course, but some of it, yes.
Namaskar, dosto. Welcome to True Rotarian Podcast, a podcast where we bring stories of service above self. We bring stories about Rotary. We bring stories about various projects which Rotary does. We also bring stories about the events that we have done. We also bring people with a lot of experience who have been involved in Rotary in eradicating some of the most deadliest diseases from the earth. So we are fortunate to have with us a very, very renowned, very respected past district governor, PDG Deepak Kapur ji. Welcome to the channel, sir.
Thank you, Hemant.
Welcome to True Rotarian Podcast. I hope you didn't have encountered any difficulty in the traffic today in the morning.
None whatsoever, apart from your introductory remarks that were a shade too generous, if I may say. And some of what, for the viewers, some of what Hemant said was also true. Not all of it, of course, but some of it, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine Deepak ji was a district governor in 1993-94. Imagine the wealth and years of experience he has with us. Before we get into the core subject, sir, may I request you to please tell us what Rotary was in 93 when you were a district governor, or maybe prior to that, and what Rotary is today?
Shall I go back 88 years before 93 to a cold Chicago evening in 1905 when the founder of Rotary, Paul Harris, met with three of his friends, none of whom, he was a lawyer, but none of the other three were lawyers, because he was sick and tired of meeting lawyers in courtrooms and just lawyers and judges. So he thought it would be nice to get some friends together who represented other occupations, if I may put it that way. So in 1905, these four gentlemen sat down, and thus Rotary was born. It was called Rotary because they used to meet regularly at each other's homes by rotation. And since it was by rotation, it came to be called Rotary. That was 1905, but in a very short period of time, they realized that just meeting each other for what they called fellowship would perhaps not be conducive to the continuance of the meetings. So they brought in an element pretty soon, within 2 years, they brought in an element of community service. In 1907, the very first community project carried out by a Rotary Club was to set up public washrooms at the Chicago railway station. And thus began this long saga of roti, kapda, makan, fighting disease, to glorify vocations, and basically be completely committed to the ideal of service and integrity, personal integrity. We all are very familiar with the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? So even though at times we may fail to live up to all the expectations in these four tests, but merely striving for them would make us better people.
True. And coming back to 90s, Rotary in 90s, how they worked and how they are working today. Can we just have a little comparison on that, sir?
I think, like any other time, there are a lot of similarities with today, but a lot of ways in which the entire thing was completely different. The regular meetings were a lot more formal, nothing like what they were when I was first exposed to Rotary. I was first exposed to Rotary towards the end of the 1950s. I was born in 1955, but my grandfather was the president of his club, the Rotary Club of Delhi, and much later my father as well. But in those days, I remember going to the year my grandfather was the secretary of the club, to going to a club meeting in the Hotel Imperial. The only club in Delhi in those days was the Rotary Club of Delhi. No other Rotary Club existed in this city. And that was the installation of our former Prime Minister Inder Kumar Gujral as president of his club. And my grandfather was the secretary. And the bonds that developed there were absolutely incredible, but I'm getting sidetracked. What I remember about that meeting was that everyone, including a 3-year-old, was required to wear a tuxedo.
Wow.
A black tie and land up for the meeting. All meetings were black tie meetings, which is a bit different today. I understand that even in district conferences in Australia, for instance, you are allowed to attend in shorts. So Rotary has evolved over time, but I think the core values remain the same. The reliance on fellowship and service has been the real core value of Rotary, and that is what we try and stick to even today.
Excellent. I've had the pleasure of having a lot of Rotarians from that time. Radhika Bakliwal was there, and when her father was president of...
Sultan Singh Ji, her father,
Yes.
was an especially close friend of my father's. They grew up in Rotary together,
Wow.
in the Rotary Club of Delhi, and I used to call him uncle always.
Fantastic.
And we were very, very close. And Radhika is quite a gem herself.
Yes, she
and
is.
Her father, and my father, Mahinder Kapur was his name. Siddheshwar Dayal was another very close friend of theirs. And these guys would actually meet the way Paul Harris and his friends first met in
Fantastic.
Chicago. Those were lovely times.
What I personally feel, like what I was saying, that I've had the pleasure of having a lot of experienced Rotarians on my show. What I sense now, as people seems to have forgotten those 24 golden words, which are basically the 4-way test. What it used to be earlier, it is just now only reading. Today, I think we have reached a stage, even for a small thing like election of a district governor, the candidates are not fighting. I think it is the district governor who's fighting the election and campaigning for everybody. It's... it's...
I wouldn't say that it's dramatically different from what used to happen 30 years ago. You had similar instances, you had similar stories going around where people who had been in power or were currently in power used to interfere in the elections. But eventually right. The guy or the lady since 1989, because before that it was only guys.
Yes.
Started, they are the final arbiters of who will become the leader of the district.
Actually, if you come to think of it, if you ask anybody, why have you joined Rotary? The only thing 99.99% people will say, to give it back to the society. If that is the basic core principle of why we joined Rotary, then I think this little bit of politics should be on the side. Anyway, let's come back to our core topic.
Can I quickly interrupt you for just half a minute?
Sir.
I plead guilty to joining Rotary not only because to serve the community. I basically joined because it was the expected thing to do in my family. I was 25 years old, and I had gone through the usual, completed my education, economics at St. Stephen's, chartered accountancy at Pricewaterhouse, blah, 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 blah. Completed my education, got married, and the third step, which was expected in our family, was to join Rotary.
Wow.
And so I did. And at one point of time, we had three generations of Rotarians living in the same house under one roof. Wow. So that was the real reason I joined. And then the fellowship aspect was exciting. So these were the two reasons I initially joined. But very soon, the importance of service did sort of seep into my blood, if I may put it that way.
Wow.
What we are hoping to eradicate, by we I mean Rotary and all the clubs across the world, is polio. And I consider myself blessed to have been involved with polio eradication efforts of Rotary International as their chairman for India since 2001. Now, usually, as you know, all positions in Rotary are for 1 year.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I must have failed multiple times to continue as the chair of the India National Committee of Rotary International for Polio Eradication since 2001. And this is going to continue at least till 2026. So for a quarter of a century, I've been involved in that. That was the time when the efforts of Rotary began for polio eradication. It was the year 1985, leading to mass immunization in other parts of the world in 1987, and eventually Dr. Harshvardhan picking up the mantle, getting convinced by Rotary that it was the way to go. By it, I mean, there's two types of immunization. The routine immunization, where you take your child to a clinic or a primary health center and he or she gets the drops or the injections now as it is. But the government of India, the state governments, were not convinced that mass immunization was the way to go. And Rotary had to keep knocking on doors and keep saying that, look at Brazil, look at other countries with large populations where routine immunization was suboptimal. So the only way to try and get rid of polio was to give drops in the campaign mode. And that was because it was this type of immunization was supplementing routine immunization. It came to be called supplementary immunization. And it continues even till today. India had its first NID, or the National Immunization Day, in 1995 because of the great success of the Delhi experiment, as we call it, when Dr. Harshvardhan tried mass immunization in 1994. Seeing the spectacular success of that, the government of India decided to hold national immunization days. So that's how it came about. When Rotary entered, I'm sorry, I'm going on talking, but when Rotary entered the fray, there were approximately 1,000 children who were affected by polio across the world every day. And what was tragic was that at least half of them, that is 500 children in India, succumbed to polio every day. And move really fast forward to the year 2011. On the 13th of January 2011, India recorded its last case of the wild polio virus.
Wow.
A child in West Bengal, Howrah. Her name is Baby Rukhsar. I met her. A lot of other senior Rotarians from across the world have met her. Luckily, she's not as badly affected as some of the other children. But since 2011, we've been striving in the campaign mode as well as rigorous routine immunization to keep polio away, which still exists in Pakistan
and Afghanistan. Yes.
Which have even this year, in this calendar year, reported 24 cases and 4 cases respectively. So the fight is not over. And if a child anywhere in the world has polio, the entire world is held to ransom because the virus doesn't know any boundaries, any political affiliations, any religion. It can just cross over and affect a child here again. So we've got to watch out against that.
Yes, and we have very successfully managed to sort of safeguard India and with the continuous efforts of Rotarians and also the government of giving the 2 drops, as they call it, of 2 drops of life, and right.
Quite.
And it's been wonderful. And then let's come back to the leprosy now. I think I was also very fortunate to have been connected with you.
Absolutely. You are more than fortunate to have been connected with it right at the inception. And then your latest very generous contribution through your club of a van which we'll just talk of right now, to help with leprosy control. Leprosy cannot be eradicated.
Yes.
Right? The only disease other than smallpox that could be eradicated is polio.
Yes.
Because it has no non-human vector, blah, 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 blah. But leprosy can be controlled to such an extent that it becomes of no consequence. And that is what your club, the Rotary Club of Delhi South End, the Rotary Club of New Delhi, and our club, Rotary Club of Delhi South, along with a whole host of Rotary clubs across the district and the country, are attempting to achieve.
Actually, it's quite funny. When I came to one of the seminars, somebody mentioned that, we have a problem about an ambulance or a van where we take patients. So I just got carried away. I said, okay, fine, I'll give one from my side. And
must have been the divine hand which came into play, the hand of God, not Maradona style. But
but then, being a true Rotarian, you have to follow protocols. I cannot come to your club and say, okay, fine, I'll give it. I'll have to route it through my club.
Sure.
So I spoke to my president and I said, here is my contribution. And
very generous contribution, and we are deeply appreciative of that. But let me tell you, you asked how did my involvement with leprosy start. It was because of the commitment to the pursuit of polio eradication, which continues till this day, that I met up with this friend a Rotarian friend in England. I'd gone for a little vacation. I go every year. And Nan Patel.
Yes.
You know Nan. So
very fine Rotarian.
Very fine gentleman. A very fine human being, a very fine Rotarian. So I went to him. He called me he says, I want you to meet some people from an organization that I'm involved with called Lepra. So they invited me to this fancy club in Pall Mall, very close to the Buckingham Palace. And I went there full of excitement on a dark, dreary, rainy afternoon, as London is wont to have. And so I went to this club. Quick aside on this. This is the club. I've got a picture of 3-4 of us taken there on 2 occasions, in fact, where it's a very famous club because Thackeray and Charles Dickens, who'd had a terrible fight, which had been continuing on for decades, actually made up at the foot of that staircase. So it's a moment in history, especially for those who are fond of English literature, to have Charles Dickens and Thackeray standing there and making up and shaking hands after 20 years, 30 years, whatever it was. So quite a... Let me get back to the point. I went to sell polio eradication to Nan, and he told me, no, you've got to meet these friends of mine, because I'm involved as a trustee in a foundation called Lepra in UK. So I'd like you to meet up with my friend, the chair of that, Charles Bland, and the CEO, and so on and so forth. So we met over lunch. I had actually gone to sell polio, and in turn they managed to sell leprosy to me. I thought leprosy belonged to the history books. I mean, who talks of leprosy today? And my last exposure to leprosy was perhaps the film Ben-Hur, in which you see instances of that. And I thought, I mean, leprosy, what are we talking about? So I was shocked to learn that even today, unfortunately, 200,000 children get leprosy every year across the world. And shades of polio, 60% of them are from India. So 120,000 Indian children contract leprosy every year. And what is tragic about this, of course, is that it's completely avoidable. There is free medication available with which the government of India is willing to give and does provide at the primary health centers. Yet two things stop people from going and availing of this. One is, of course, ignorance. They're not aware that they should go there and they can get free medication. And the second is that the stigma attached to a patient of leprosy, because the moment you think of leprosy, you imagine people with no noses, with fingers falling off, with toes crumbling. That happens, of course. But what is tragic on the one hand and exciting on the other is that there is a multi-drug therapy of a combination of 4 antibiotics that, if administered to a person, would make that person a non-transmitter of leprosy. It is estimated that every live patient of leprosy would, in his or her lifetime, infect 300 people. So if you start multiplying 120,000 by 300, you know what it would lead to. And what is tragic on the one hand and exciting on the other is that if the multi-drug therapy is taken, the person stops being a transmitter, hold your breath, within 48 hours.
Wow.
And it's such a travesty of life that we still don't address it.
Basically, I think it is the lack of awareness in various areas is one of the reasons why people are not aware of this.
Absolutely.
And that was, I think, that with Lepra UK, that was one of the basic objective was to create an awareness.
You know, this. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but this memorandum of understanding that your club, Rotary Club of New Delhi, and my club, the Rotary Club of Delhi South, signed with Lepra UK 6 years ago in August 2019.
1920, yes.
That's right.
Just before COVID.
That's right. Was to essentially the entire exercise or the entire future endeavors were based on 4, as we call them, pillars of the partnership. The first was awareness creation.
Yes.
Talking about the disease, how it arises, what can be done, the free medication available, blah, blah. And the second is to train paramedical staff as well as medical officers to spot leprosy. I mean, not many people understand that in today's day and age, I wasn't the only one who thought leprosy was gone. Even medical personnel feel that. And today, a lot of doctors don't know how to spot the signs of leprosy. So the second pillar, apart from awareness, the first one, the second was training of medical and paramedical staff, including ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers and other health volunteers and paid people in the government setup to spot leprosy, to be able to find out when a patient has leprosy. The third pillar was to actually go out in the field and find new cases, which we called active case finding. A huge exercise was conducted by us, by this partnership, with the government of Northeast Delhi. You'll recall hundreds and thousands of people were visited, and we tried to find active cases, which the government does periodically from time to time.
That's right.
And that was the third pillar. And the fourth one was, what about those who've already been affected? So even though the word or the term palliative is usually used in cancer care, we looked at the dictionary meaning and decided it was appropriate here. So palliative care to those who are suffering or who have in the immediate, not immediate, or in the past suffered from leprosy and are trying to cope with what all it entails. So that was the fourth pillar. Now, as we went along over the years, after all, it was 6 years ago, again, you are aware of this, we added two more pillars to this. One was rehabilitative surgeries, reconstruction surgeries.
Yes.
The idea came from the wonderful work which Dr. Varghese has done in the St. Stephen's Hospital for polio rehabilitation surgery. So we thought, and we spoke to an organization called the Leprosy Mission Trust, which has 14 large and small hospitals spread across the country. And they are perhaps the leaders in efforts for leprosy control in India amongst the NGOs. Huge organization and a wonderful organization. And we are extremely fortunate to be associated with them. So we were funding these reconstructives and continue to do so. And they would carry out these surgeries to make someone who's crawling on the ground be able to stand up and actually go out in society. And the sixth pillar, it's very interesting. My friend and colleague, whom you know well, Tridibes Basu, went to this leprosy colony in Gurgaon, not very far from here. You and I would shudder to think that there are leprosy colonies close to us.
There is one in Gurgaon.
There's one in Gurgaon at least, and there are more than 70 in Delhi.
In Delhi, yes.
Which is something that
which
is quite mind-boggling.
Yes.
So he went there and he said, look, we are involved with this control of leprosy and alleviation of problems, and what can we do for you? Especially in the aftermath of COVID, when you will recall, we actually had a van going around to 6 leprosy colonies distributing free food.
Yes.
Because their means of livelihood had been completely curtailed during COVID. Twice a day at times, and then later every day for a protracted period of time, several months. And there we had a club from Bangalore, Rotary Club of Bangalore, I think it was North, if I remember right, who came up and partnered with us with a CSR grant, and we took it from there. So the refrain that Tridibas Basu heard from the colony inmates was, "साहब ये आपने खाना दे दिया, आपने ट्रेनिंग कर दी, आपने अवेयरनेस क्रिएट कर दी, दवाइयाँ, ये तो हमें सब सरकार से मिल जाता है. But what happens even when we are healed? Nobody is willing to give us a job. Nobody is willing to give a job to my family members because of the stigma attached to the disease. So do something about that." Now that idea incubated for a few months until we got actually two companies involved by agreeing to give their CSR, corporate social responsibility funding for this project. The two whose names must be mentioned are Acre and our own family company, Emil Limited, which has also contributed. We are thankful to the board of that company for a fairly large sum of money and repeating it every year. So with the help of these, with the Acre money we had set up at the Mother Teresa Home for Leprosy here in Delhi, a solar plant to provide free electricity.
Wow.
And later, a full electric generation center, whatever it's called, so that they keep producing the electricity, which is fed to the grid. And on demand, they get free electricity from the grid. So that was one of the things, apart from all the wheelchairs and ulcer management and other things that have been funded by ACRE. Then when we spoke about vocational skilling or training to Emil Limited, we found an interest there. So we tied up with the Leprosy Mission at their center in Noida to set up this massive vocational training courses in different disciplines that are going to be expanded further this year as well, for skilling the family members of those suffering from leprosy to earn a livelihood for themselves and for their family. I am quite delighted with the response that generated from the community and from the leprosy colonies. There is literally a waiting list of people who are wanting to get skilled. And what is really gratifying is that not only are they trained, they get a certificate from the government recognizing that training by whatever name called, depending on the trade, and and then that's not all. I mean, you can't go home and put the certificate on the wall and feed the rest of the family members.
You got to get a job.
But these guys and girls, young people, are guaranteed jobs, be it in it could be across various companies. It could be McDonald's, it could be X, Y, Z, whatever. And they have all been placed. All those who have so far graduated from this, they have been placed and are earning money and feeding their families in many cases.
Wonderful, wonderful. What satisfying experience you have sort of had for the last so many years. First helping almost eradicate polio, and now we are on the verge of creating a huge awareness and giving dignity to those unfortunate people who are suffering from leprosy.
With a lot of help from you, I must say, and the Rotary Club of Delhi South End, who have been our terrifically strong partners in this endeavor.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for coming, sir, and to True Rotarian Podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning on and listening to True Rotarian Podcast. If you also have any story to tell or a project to tell us, or you want to tell us how to improve our sort of programs and structuring newer and newer topics, it'll be more than our pleasure to welcome you to our show. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Jai Hind. Thank you, sir.
Brilliant.
Thank you.